Hello, and thank you very much for joining the ExamSoft webinar series. It's a pleasure to have all of you with us today on the webinar. We are honored to have Dr. Jane Souza hosting this afternoon's webinar. The webinar is on curriculum mapping and how to close the loop. Dr. Souza is the Assistant Dean of Assessment from St. John Fisher's College, Wegman School of Pharmacy. She has a storied career in higher education as an administrator. She served as the Chief Academic Officer, Executive Director of 6 colleges and consortiums, as well as an accreditation team member of the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. With that, I'm going to hand the webinar over to her in a second. You're welcome to ask questions throughout the webinar. There is a little question field down below your tools in the GoToWebinar section. If you type in your question at the end of the webinar, I'll read the questions to Dr. Souza and she will answer them to the best of her ability. And if we get to where we can't get to all the questions, we'll certainly address those questions with you personally after the webinar. So again, thank you for joining us. Remember, you can ask questions at any time via the chat screen, and we will get to those at the very end of the webinar. So Dr. Souza, I'll pass it on to you, and thank you again so much for volunteering your time to join us and host this webinar.
Thank you very much, Ken. It is my pleasure and privilege. I really enjoy the opportunity to speak with my colleagues across higher education on something very near and dear to my heart, and that is assessment. I will talk today really about something I call evidence-based curriculum mapping, and I speak with you from the perspective of someone currently serving as a Dean of Assessment, and also currently serving as now an accrediting team member for Middle States, previously having done so for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. So I am bringing that perspective with me to this. That'll be my focus, but I certainly welcome all of your questions toward the end of the seminar. With that, I will begin with the factors driving curricular mapping. I think I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm sure you're well aware, but I do want to start with just an overview of why we're so concerned with this. At the institutional level, of course, we're addressing documentation of compliance for accreditation standards. We're looking at mapping course-level curricular outcome to our more institutional level objectives, and we are going to talk about that a little bit today. Also making data-driven academic decisions. All of our decisions really now are being held to the data test. At the faculty level, we're interested in measuring student progress on course objectives. That is true regardless of our setting. Of documenting teaching effectiveness, certainly for dossiers for promotion and tenure, but also for personal satisfaction. For collecting data for scholarship of teaching and learning, and I will talk a little bit about that. Our faculty are very much engaged in the scholarship of teaching and learning and using their maps for that purpose. It's pretty exciting, actually. And at the student level, we truly want to encourage self-directed learning. If they have a map of where to go, it's easier to follow that. To provide personal feedback throughout the course of the semester, then of course throughout their degree program, and then document their longitudinal progress so that we can check their retention of learning. These are all factors that are driving us to curricular mapping and simultaneously assessment. I was looking at institutional missions and I decided to stay close to home. I picked up our institutional level mission here at St. John Fisher College. This is on our website. Anyone can find it. And I highlighted in white there teaching, learning, scholarship of student-centered educational environment, intellectual inquiry, professional integrity, civic responsibility. My point in highlighting these is any time you put something in your mission, you put that up for the world to see, you're saying that is what drives you, then it's fair game for any accreditor or any constituent to come back to you and say, okay, prove it. Show me how you do it. Where's the evidence? So these things, and we're going to talk about this later as we do some mapping, we should be able to map to all of these things that we put at our institutional level missions. The same thing holds true for program level. This is an abstract from the pharmacy schools here. Their goal And I highlighted there, provides qualified students with knowledge, skills, abilities, and attitudes and values necessary to become a licensed pharmacist. Lovely to say, all well and good. So anybody, any constituent should be able to come in, or stakeholder, and say, show me. Where's the evidence that you do what you say you're doing, that you are meeting your goals that are clearly stated on your website? At the course level, now this is one of our courses, this is a biosystems course, and I highlight molecular, cellular, and systems anatomy and physiology are the primary themes of that course. That's wonderful. We know you teach that. You say you teach that. Where's the evidence that the students are learning? So the theme in running through this is it's wonderful to have clearly articulated goals, objectives, missions. But now it is not enough. We know that the federal government is pressuring the accrediting agencies to demonstrate evidence-based decisions about accreditation and about the quality of our schools. And of course, that's being driven down to the campus level, where we are all required to provide that evidence. So I'm hoping to give you some strategies about how to do that. We're talking about curriculum mapping. We all do it. We start with our institutional goals. And from there, we derive our programmatic goals, which feed our course level goals. This is a map everyone is familiar with. I don't think there's a college out there that isn't doing that. But what I have found in repeatedly is that we do these lovely maps, but the documentation of teaching as presented in our course syllabi or in our learning objectives or in our missions does not mean that the students are learning it. So we can take a syllabus and say, these are the 8 objectives that I cover in my syllabus. They're clearly stated. No one will object to that. But then I say, well, how do I know your students are learning what you're teaching? And that's what we have to get at. And that's where we need to dig a little deeper and find the evidence. So I propose that documentation of your syllabus is not documentation of student learning. And then when we talk about the ever-present loop that we need to close, that loop is not closed at this point. We can do a perfect map that aligns every course level objective with every program level objective with every institutional goal, but it's not closed. So what is that loop? Well, I'm borrowing here from the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. I think they do a really nice job of articulating the loop. So I borrowed this from them. And so we start with developing clearly articulated statements of learning outcomes. From there, we design the experiences that provide the opportunities to achieve those outcomes. So that's what we do in our classrooms. Then we assess the students' achievement of those outcomes. Then we use those assessments, the results of those assessments, to improve teaching and learning. And I really do like this here because even if we're doing a summative assessment, we're doing at the end of a course or at the end of a program, we're checking how our students are doing this great summative information, but we always should be mindful that it's also formative information. It is continuously telling us how to improve our teaching, what pedagogical techniques are working and what are not. So I really like this loop, and I think they've done a nice job of articulating it there. I am always having that in front of me. So that's what they're talking about in terms of closing the loop, making sure that we use our evidence to make some decisions. So when we are looking at closing the loop here, we had some conversations about how best to do that. And we have a very active assessment committee that I chair. And it's full of wonderfully invested people, such as students and preceptors and faculty members and administrators. And we came to the decision that embedded assessment was the best way for us to close that loop. So how do we do that? We code or tag, whichever term you prefer, all the existing student assessments. And I underlined and bolded existing because we didn't create anything new. We took existing student assessments and we coded them to institutional, programmatic, and course level objectives. And I will demonstrate clearly how we did that in a moment. And then we mine the data from these existing assessments. We'll look at all those results and then track the density of the coverage of those objectives. So if I have, if I took every single one of my tests from every single course from, let's say, the pharmacy program, P1 through 3, the first 3 years, and I had every single question in every single test mapped to specific learning outcomes, well, in the end, I'm going to know how many questions I asked about every single learning objective. Now, I would argue that, yes, some would say, well, that's great for the didactic, and you're absolutely right. If you're giving a test that is true, false, multiple choice, open-ended, essay, you can do that very easily. But I also believe that you can take that same philosophy and carry it into other student activities, whether it's a presentation that you're doing, whether it's a site visit, whether it's a novel that you're reading and you're writing a paper. You can track all those assignments and code them the same way you can code your exam to start building that, that density of coverage map. Now, not just the map, but the density of coverage map. And then you can directly map, when you look at those assessments and you look at the outcomes of those assessments, you can look at the student performance on them. So now we can say, no kidding, this is what I teach. I can prove I teach it because I'm testing it. And we will find, if you really think about it, faculty test what they care about. What they teach and what they care about, they test. So if I show you the evidence of my test, I'm showing you this is what my students are learning, this is what I'm testing it on, and I can test them on it because I've taught it. So I'm really laying it all out there. And if I analyze the longitudinal results, it will provide evidence that I'm actually meeting my objectives. I'm not just saying those are my objectives, I'm showing you evidence that I'm meeting those objectives. That's very, very important. So what are the advantages of taking this embedded assessment approach? Well, you're collecting data from existing test quizzes and exams. So there's no additional testing for the students, but there's no additional test development for the faculty. That was huge for us when we were talking with our assessment committee. The faculty spend countless hours writing high-quality exams. They build case scenarios. Even their multiple choice questions are really designed to foster critical thinking skills. So there's a lot of time and investment into the present exams and assessments. We really want to mine those for all that they're worth. And when you do this, you're giving real-time information. So as opposed to, let's say, because we did consider an annual exam, let's say at the end of the year we're going to test them on what they should have learned in their freshman year or their P1 year, depending on the program you're in. Well, that gives them information that's kind of late. If I give them information every single time they take an exam, how they're doing in these critical areas that I've identified, I'm giving them instant feedback. And so what does that do? It gives me time to remediate and to and change my teaching if the assessments aren't coming back the way I want to see it. So it gives me the opportunity to adjust my pedagogy, but also for the students to know where to put their emphasis. Again, I'm going to give you very specific examples of this. It's going to give you a more precise indication of student achievement because everything's been mapped. And if you map it properly, if you categorize it properly, you'll simultaneously be building your map of the curriculum. So I know I'm mapping my curriculum, I'm providing evidence of the student learning, and I'm tracking the density of the coverage. I'm doing all of this simultaneously only with existing assessments, which I think is a huge advantage. So once we decided to take that approach, we started looking at the disadvantages. As you can imagine, I'm sure you've thought of already, this requires a large database. It also requires a fairly sophisticated tracking system for reporting this. So if I'm going to collect all of the data from every single question, then somebody's got to be putting that together. That could potentially be a lot of time. So it's potentially a very time-consuming process. So we said, oh, okay, we know we want to do this. We know it's a great idea. How do we go about it? And this is actually where the ExamSoft link came in. I know there are other ways to do this, but I'm sharing with you the solution that we have found. I happened to be at a AACP workshop, their annual conference 2 years ago, and I saw this ExamSoft demonstrated, and it fit what we wanted to do. So let me explain how it works very quickly, and then we'll move on to some demonstrations of this. If we have a question that we put into an exam, here we map it to the competencies that are required by our external accrediting agency. Now, whether this is middle states or NCATE or AACSB or ACPE or LMNOP, it doesn't matter. If I have my competencies listed, I can take each question and map it to that. I can also map it, I put the author of the question there so I know to follow that, who is my faculty member. What is the course level outcome? I can map this to my individual course level outcome so I know how I'm doing on that. Of course, the subject or the course. The category and the subcategory, and we'll talk about that. That's going to be defined whatever route you take that to. For us, it's our appendices within with the ACPE. And we also track to Bloom's taxonomy because we want to know, are we teaching at the knowledge level, at the application level, or at the synthesis level? Obviously, we're looking to build those skills in our pharmacists. So we built the exams, each question, categorize it the way we want to see it categorized, and then the students go into their computers. We do require computers, laptops of our students, and they get onto their computers and they take their exams. I will say, for those of you worried about internet access, they only need internet access at 2 points, and that's when they download the exam, they put it on their computer, it sits on their computer. They can download it. We usually give them a couple of days before the exam to download it. So it's sitting on their computer. They can't open it until they get the password. They come into class, everybody's sitting together, they're proctored. The faculty member says, okay, here's your password. They open up the exam, they take it. They are not online, so we do not need internet connection. They are not online. They take the exam, and then they can leave the classroom as long as we've seen that they've closed the exam. Once you close the exam, you can't open it anymore. So you've closed the exam, you can upload it at any time. If you don't have internet access in that room, fine, leave the room, upload it from home, upload it out in the quad, wherever you want to be. You have maybe till the end of the night to upload your exam. So the point is that the students are taking their exams on a computer. And boy, let me tell you, when it comes to essay questions and fill in the blanks, our faculty are loving it. There's no handwriting to read. There's no spell check. There's spell check. It's wonderful. If the faculty are grading an essay question, there's a little box. They write their comments to the students right there in the box next to the essay, and they push out a button, and the students get all the faculty comments all nicely typed for them. So it's pretty cool. And then we take, of course, what do we do with this? We analyze the data, and we look at the aggregate measure of the learning outcomes. We have the ability to provide student feedback, and I'm going to get into the reports in a minute, and you'll see how we are able to customize our feedback for the individual students, and at the same time get where we want to go in terms of evidence for our student teaching and learning. So some of the advantages of mapping this way and going through this trouble, and I know there are some people out there from pharmacy schools, and I know you can relate to this. ACPE is our accrediting agency, and they have appendices B, C, and D. So we're mapping to those. And just to give you a sense, in Appendix B alone, there are 35 different bulleted items for us to map to, and under those 35 major categories, there are subcategories, there are 219 of them. We mapped to all 219 of them. And then, of course, C and D is more the experiential side of the house. We mapped to Bloom's taxonomy only at 3 levels. For those of you in education out there, I know you're saying there are 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, but we, for our purposes, found that it serves our purpose to just map at the knowledge, application, and synthesis level. So that's as far as we take it, and we give faculty a nice chart of verbs to use to map at that level. We also mapped to cumulative questions, and I wanted to point this out because I didn't want to ask faculty to map too many ways because I thought I was giving them too much work. And they came back to me and said, Jane, can we map it cumulative? I said, okay, what do you mean? Well, if your in your first year, if there's a concept that you learn in the first year that should be carried and retained all through the years, it will be repeated, it builds on it, can we put it in that bucket so that anybody who comes after can take that question and put it into an exam later on, so that we're reinforcing the retention of those fundamental concepts? I went, wow, that is a really good idea. So I created these buckets for cumulative, and the faculty can put cumulative questions in. We also have course level outcomes. Again, originally my idea was just to map at our programmatic level, at the accreditation level, at the Bloom's level, and the faculty said, no, I'd like to be able to map at my individual course level as well. So these are the outcomes I have in my course. I want to know how many questions I'm asking for each of my outcomes. What? Okay, that's wonderful. And for systems, this will make sense for you, for those of you out in the medical field. We also map to systems. So we have the renal system, the cardio system, the vascular system, the respiratory system. So we can see what area our students are weak on. They might be really great with the renal system, but really struggle with cardio, and we'll be able to see that because we've mapped at that level. So when we're looking at ExamSoft, these are the broad categories that I have going right now. Appendix B and D because we do have some things in Appendix D that are mapped in there. Bloom's taxonomy, cumulative, the individual course level learning outcomes, and the system. So when a faculty member writes a question, they put into the appropriate buckets. And what does that look like? Well, and you can translate this into anything, whether you're teaching biology, chemistry, English. If there's a concept and you're breaking it down, you can have subcategories. Let's just look at any one of these. I said Appendix B has 35 major categories: anatomy and physiology, pathophysiology, microbiology, immunology. And underneath those, where you see the little plus there, I've got this. Where there's a plus, for example, this is bioanalysis and pharmaceutics and biopharmaceutics. Under that major category, I have these subcategories. These numbers, by the way, this is a snapshot. I can't remember what month I took this in, but these are the actual number of questions sitting in each of those buckets. So now, if you imagine I have my learning objectives here and I've got them articulated, I can see, well, I've asked 68 questions in my first learning objective, but I've only asked 10 in my second learning objective. Gee, where do I want to spend more time? So it creates this map, this really strong evidence-based map as we move along. Again, this is a closer look at Bloom's taxonomy. At this point in time, I had 355 questions in the knowledge, 94 in application, and 4 in synthesis. This was over the summer, building these questions. Knowledge base is where a lot of people start. They're most comfortable there. So this gives me a little map of my density. So at the standards level, I am documenting, addressing specific accreditation and departmental standards. And an example of one departmental learning outcome, once it's identified, not only is the density of coverage documented, but the student's achievement is captured. Again, I can't stress that enough. If I'm an accreditor coming in, you show me your syllabus, you said, these are my learning outcomes. I'm going to say, those are great outcomes. How do you know your students are learning them? Where's the evidence? So now I'm going to marry the student learning outcomes, their assessments. How do they do in each of these? Directly with my learning outcomes. So at that outcomes level, I'm going to know the depth of coverage and the density of coverage. How many questions did I ask in every one of those areas? Was it really lopsided? Should it be really lopsided? There may be some fundamental ones that should require most of your time. But you can do the analysis because you've got it demonstrated so clearly. And at the student level, you're enabling students to self-evaluate. Here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses, here's where I should spend my time. The faculty can create a remediation guide. And let me stop here for a minute and talk about remediation testing. Let's say I've created this test bank, and all the faculty are contributing to this test bank. And we find that the students are weak in anatomy and physiology. They're doing well in everything else, but darn it all, every time I have a piece of a question, a piece of an exam rather, that deals with anatomy and physiology, they're falling down. So I'm going to give them assignments and readings to do related to that. Now when I want to build an exam to test them only on anatomy and physiology, it's very easy to do. I go into my anatomy and physiology bucket, and I only pull out questions from there. And I create an exam on the fly just with the areas that the student has exhibited weakness in. So I don't have to replicate whole exams that mix everything in. I can target it. I can laser beam it. And if it is just respiratory, I can target an exam just respiratory and see how the students are doing. So I really love that, and actually our faculty love that. And I put this here so I wouldn't forget to say, don't forget the opportunities for scholarship. People often ask me, how did you get the faculty to buy into doing this? Well, I promise you it was a very, very easy thing for me to do, because our faculty they're monitoring their exams anyway. They have been for years. But now they're looking at this data and saying, okay, I'm looking at pre and post. I'm going to intervene. I'm going to try a different pedagogical approach. I'm going to take the pre-data, record the intervention, take the post data, and write up the findings. We do have a lot of posters being generated. We have a lot of scholarship being generated, and this is supporting it, and I'm thrilled about that. I know this is hard to see, and I'm going to give you something that's showing up at a much closer level. But right now, when the student gets a report back, we don't normally give the student the whole exam back, because the faculty are, you know, they spent a long time creating these questions, so they want to keep their databases to themselves. They'll generally give them something that will say, how did you do in each of the categories? And I know this is hard to see, and I'm going to blow it up later for you, but for example, on this one, I'm just going to highlight, there were 10 questions on pathophysiology of disease states, and this student got 70% correct. And I'm going to go to the 14 here. Mechanism of action of drugs, there were 14 questions, and this student at 78%. And the role of pharmacy in drug choice and treatment, they scored 62%. So I'm going to look down really closely and right away see, what's the student weak in? If I'm, now imagine, this is just for one quiz. Imagine I'm looking at this longitudinally, and I'm still seeing a 62% in, or a 70% in mechanism of action. I'm going to know where to spend my time in helping this student out. This is what a typical student exam report would look like. So I have my score. I've done 81.3 on this exam, and the class average was 79. So I'm feeling pretty good. I am above the class average, but it shouldn't stop there. What did I do well in, and what did I not do well in? Well, the green means I'm ahead of the class average. So I've got the little black triangle here. I'm slightly ahead of the class average there. I'm right about at the class average, or just below it on Anatomy 3. Look, go down to the red, gross anatomy and embryology. Here's me, here's the class average. Okay, so that was my weakness. So I get a really quick snapshot. Where was I strong? Where was I weak? Where am I right on target, or kind of in the warning area? So it's really nice that the students are able to get that kind of detail. Now, the faculty are going to get something that looks like this. Here's the exam performance. High score was 99. Low score was 63, and the average was 86. Here's a little histogram showing the distribution. It's going to give a breakdown of all the categories, what scored well, where was the high, medium, and low for each category. And it's also going to pop up the at-risk students. Who's the lowest 27% of the class? So who's having trouble here? And for us, we have 80 students in the class, so it's nice to be able to isolate right away the ones who are having difficulty. And then I'm also, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, at the question performance level. I want to check my internal reliability and validity on my questions. How are my questions performing? So if they're not performing well, do I want to retire those questions, or do I want to edit them? Do I want to tweak them? Because as a faculty member, I'm very interested in continuous improvement of my course. So This is actually a blow up from the top part of an exam that was given just a couple of weeks ago. So this is a real exam. The high score was 100, the low score was 59, the average was 83. Here's the distribution of the grades. As far as the reliability of the exam score, we're monitoring that KR 20, and right here it's satisfactory, but you know what? I think we can do better on this exam. And this is just the top part where it says Appendix B, microbiology, pathogenic microorganisms. So here's how the students did in this particular area. So if I look at all of them combined, I can see where the students are falling down. Where's the problem? The faculty have a lot of data to use to make decisions about what they're doing in the classroom. This is, again, from a real exam that was recently given, and there's something I wanted to demonstrate on this that I think is pretty cool. Here are some questions. So I'm looking at the percent correct. I'm looking at the lower upper averages and the point by serial. Generally, we ask our faculty member, you know, we want to be at least 0.20 for the point by serial on our exams to check the validity and reliability of our exams. Well, I'm looking at this and I see a 0.12 here, and 76, the star means that's the correct answer. So I know that the lower 27% of the class, 95% of them got that right, and the upper 100%. So it's not very good at distinguishing the lower part of the class from the higher part of the class, but that's okay because this was a question that was cumulative. Students should know this, but we're throwing in cumulative questions. There should be some questions in there that they get right. We're doing our jobs, so that's fine. Now compare that with this question over here. I looked at this and I said right away, okay, we've got 26 students choosing response A and 30 choosing response C. Why do we have almost half the class choosing the wrong question? Let's look at that. Let's look at the answer. And the faculty actually went back, looked at the answer and went, you know what? This is really confusing. I didn't word this right. And you'll notice 2 stars over here because they went back and accepted both answers. So it automatically recalculated everybody's score. I like that this is demonstrated because they said, you know what, that was on me. My question was not clear. My response was not clear. I understand why the students went astray. I'm just going to mark both those as right. Bingo, recalculates the exam, everybody's grade gets redistributed. But you can see how closely they can sit down, analyze every item really quickly. And by the way, they're doing this on the web. The faculty are online when they're looking at all these reports. So that means they're doing it from home, they're doing it from school, they're doing it from their practice sites, they're doing it. I had a faculty member who was grading an exam while waiting to have her oil changed, and she was ticked off that the oil change was done because she said, no, I need some more time to grade. But she was doing it on her iPad, waiting for her oil to be changed. Whatever. I mean, it's pretty neat to be able to do this, and if you're making faculty life easier, they're very appreciative of that. So obviously, and any time you're dealing with assessments, you want to validate your findings. I will say that we're looking at external validation. We do some external measures. We do something in pharmacy called the PCOA, which is we test our students in it's a nationally given exam by the National Association of the Boards of Pharmacy, and we do it at the end of the 3rd year. So we want to compare the results of the PCOA because those are in the broad categories from Appendix B, and compare that with our internal to see the external is validating our internal coverage, our curriculum. If you have the opportunity to do an annual exam, or if you have an exit exam, I'm not saying to do one, but if you are doing one, it's a wonderful opportunity to look at your embedded assessment versus your external assessment. And internally, you're monitoring that constant performance of the test. You're monitoring the longitudinal results. You're looking at the history. You're mining that evidence constantly to validate, to do internal validation of your findings. That's an important thing to mention. Now, if we go back to the original part of the conversation about curriculum mapping, I'm just giving you this snapshot. At one point in time, this is what we had for Appendix B on these items. 14 questions here, 23 here, 3, 9. Well, this was obviously while we were in our developmental phase. But imagine after we have 4 years worth of questions in here, or even 1 year, we will have covered all the students. I want to be able to tell, are we missing anything? Now this, obviously, we hadn't taught this class yet. The questions hadn't been loaded for that. So that's fine. Right now we're dealing a lot with pharmacology. But if I go through a whole year and I still have 0 in here, I'm going to go back and see where do we need to test? Where are we missing? I've got a map and I've got evidence on how students are doing on every single one of these. Here's something we want to check the balance of the coverage. Right now, I have 1,446 knowledge questions, 512 application, 47 synthesis for this fall, okay? So that's a distribution here. That's fine if you're at the beginning of the program. As we progress through the program, this should change, and I want to monitor that. Is that changing? This is real longitudinal data from this fall. We've given 38 exams. 34 of them had application questions in them, and 16 of those exams had synthesis questions in them. There were 530 knowledge, 268 application, and 20 synthesis. And this was my average. And that's pretty much what I would hope it would be. Highest in knowledge, little going down in application, little down in synthesis. Now this is real. I just pulled this Sunday. I put this screen together. So this is data as of Sunday. So here's that group average I just showed you. Now let's say I'm advising students. I've got this student, okay, this is great. Wow, wonderful. Synthesis, application, pretty good across the board. Student B, great in application. What's happening with the synthesis? Student C, 92, 93, 66. I want to now, when I'm working with the student, where am I going to focus my attention? Let's pull up those synthesis questions. What's going on here? Why are we not able to connect the dots? I can really advise my students based on clear evidence. Now, let's talk about this in terms of content. In neurologic, there were 2 exams covering it with 33 items. Endocrinology, 4 exams, 7 items. Osteoporosis, 1 exam, 8 items. This was my group average. Osteoporosis was the weak spot. Granted, this is a small number right now based on what was covered in some lectures. But still, imagine, project this out over time. If I still have 75% in osteoporosis and I'm up in the high 80s, everything else, where do I need to spend my time? So now I'm going to circle back to the beginning now, closing the loop with evidence. Remember that institutional goal that I gave you about intellectual integrity or intellectual inquiry? If I had that map, you're going to be able to map that virtually everything in your didactic curriculum. In this case, let's say I'm doing skills for pharmaceutical care. And my course objective here was osteoporosis, and over time it was still at 75% correct. Well, the next thing I have to do is close that loop. What am I going to do? As a faculty member, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to give additional readings. I'm going to try some turning point check-ins, turning point questions, or I'm making this up. So whatever I do to try to move the needle on the 75%, I'm going to record over here. And what am I doing? I am creating a chain of evidence that says I'm closing the loop, that I know that what I'm teaching in is supporting my institutional learning outcomes, and that any changes I make to my curriculum and to my pedagogy are based on data. So that's linking your actions to the data and generating evidence-based curriculum mapping. So very quickly, some technical strategies for implementation that we did. We provided mock exams for the students and faculty to get used to this. We hosted multiple faculty development sessions to cover how to do all this. We use low-stake quizzes to familiarize students with the system. So first mock exams and then low-stakes exams, maybe some take-home. Give them scratch paper because they might have difficulty getting away from paper. You know, we're retraining students to take exams in a different environment. We did struggle a little bit, I won't lie, with our electrical capacity, not internet capacity, but electrical capacity, because our classroom was a little older and we didn't have outlets for every student. and some of them, their batteries were not very good. And then we negotiated student discounts for laptops for those who didn't have them and wanted to buy them. And of course, provided lots and lots of continuous support for our faculty in the process. So I'll summarize and then leave room for questions. Mapping alone does not equal evidence of learning. I cannot stress that enough. I just came from a middle stage training session last week, and all we dealt with, it was Standard 7 and 14. That's institutional assessment and teaching and learning assessment. You can't say, it's in my syllabus, I have it covered. You have to say, tell me how you know the students are learning it. Mapping does not equal evidence of learning. So if you mine your embedded assessments, you can get that evidence, and then you can connect your objectives at all levels, at your course level, at your programmatic level, at your degree level, at your institutional level. There is the ability to do that. So now you're able to document also that any actions that you take, whether it is changing a program, modifying a course syllabus, dropping a course, moving a course, any of the decisions that you normally make in the process of improving your curriculum, you can say, I'm making those based on evidence, not on who's chair at the time, not on who likes to teach what at the time. No, evidence was driving each of those decisions. So what are you doing? You're closing the loop on assessment of teaching and learning using evidence. And I truly believe that that is going to help you with your accreditation visits. It's going to help you with your faculty who are so invested and engaged. Their whole lives are built around the student teaching and learning, and it's wonderful to provide them a tool to document that. So with that, I will open it up to questions. I know I talked pretty quickly there, but I wanted to get through my slide deck. So I'd love to hear your questions.
Dr. Souza, thank you so much for running through the presentation. We have our first couple of questions in, and again, I'll encourage anyone who has a question to use the question pane on your GoToWebinar tool, type in your question, and we will start answering them. As soon as you started your presentation, we got a bunch of people who all asked, will a copy of your slides be available, and will there be a recording available of this webinar? And yes, we will have both the copy of her deck and a copy of this recorded webinar available probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, and we'll send an email to everybody who is registered and attended the webinar so they can have a copy of that. Next question was, is there a way to have students' answers automatically uploaded?
As soon as a student closes the exam, it tries to upload automatically. So first they get a bright yellow screen that says the exam is done, and it tries to upload. If they're not connected to the internet at the time, it's not going to upload, obviously. So as soon as they go and click on Soft Test, which is their software program later, it will automatically upload. But what is automated is if you set an upload deadline for them to do it, you can also set a reminder time. So students will get an email, have you uploaded yet? You know, so they will get an automated reminder, but it's going to try to upload. I will tell you that we have very good internet in our classroom. So most of the time students are uploaded. It takes less than, I would say on average, 30 seconds to upload an exam. So most of them have it uploaded before they leave the class.
Do the students see their own results?
That is entirely at the faculty discretion. There are some faculty who say, I'm just giving true, false, multiple choice. As soon as you're done, you're going to see how you did. There's some faculty that say, well, obviously I can't do that because I have fill in the blanks and essays. Well, you need to grade those. Some people have all multiple choice and still don't want to release it because they want the ability to do what I showed you, is that you can analyze the data and say, you know what, that question wasn't really good. I'm going to throw it out, or I'm going to use it as a bonus, or whatever they're going to do with it. So they don't want to give out student results until they've had the ability to look at the performance chart. So again, that's entirely at the discretion of the faculty. And every faculty chooses differently, so they don't lose the autonomy.
Another question, do you have to use a laptop to deliver the exams?
No. In fact, some of our students don't have them. We have a computer lab we send them to, and we proctor the computer lab. So some use their laptop, some use their the computer labs here, and in the future, I know ExamSoft is moving to the ability to do this on the iPad. Faculty can do what they need to do on the iPad. Students can't yet, but I think it's coming. Although, you know what, we like the bigger screen, so we're happy with the laptop.
And just to add what she said, we are actually announcing iPad. We've announced that we're going to be demonstrating it at the upcoming EduCollege conference, and then it'll be released in early January. In addition, you can also use Scantron today to deliver your exam simultaneously with a laptop. Next question. Go ahead, Dr. Souza.
Oh, I just want to say, if there's one advantage of the iPad, the battery is much better than on a laptop.
That's true. So, sorry. So how much time was expended in faculty development?
Actually, you know, the software itself is pretty intuitive. I think the more time was spent in faculty sitting down and coding their questions. I continuously am available for faculty if they have questions on their exams, so they want me to proofread, or how do I launch this exam again, or whatever. I did training, but you know what? Until they're actually using it, that's when the questions come up. So I think it's having continuous support available. Just before this webinar, a faculty member came in and said, I'm launching an exam. I don't want to do anything wrong. Can you just sit here while I do it? And she brought in her laptop, and I watched her launch it, and that was fine. So I would say it's not all at once. We did, you know, a session on how to write questions, how to launch an exam, how to grade an exam. But then, you know what, when they do it, they'll come back to you with questions. You need to have a point person, and for me, I'm that point person. But I've also now developed my super faculty users who faculty can go to as well, so it's not just me.
Are there any already developed frameworks for categories that are provided by ExamSoft to minimize some of the upfront strategizing needed for mapping?
Okay, glad you asked that. If you are a pharmacy school, my mapping system, I am really promoting it. I've put it on the P site for those of you aware of AACP. I encourage anybody who develops a map such as I did to share it, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to share test bank items over institutions and help validate each other's questions. So I have sent my mapping to AACP, to ACPE, to PEAAS, and anybody who asks me for it, I will gladly share it, and I offer you the opportunity to share questions with me. And with my faculty, I have faculty dying to share case-based questions. So I will say that from my perspective, I'm more than happy to share.
And then in addition to that, we have frameworks built out for a number of the other health sciences programs, including medical schools, nursing schools, and we have a Bloom's taxonomy framework that's built out as well. So we're able to address some of that, and we certainly can help you in addition. The next question, and I'll sort of qualify this question for you somewhat, Dr. Souza, is what are the costs of implementing the hardware, software, and training? We've had a couple people ask about cost, and how long does it take to get up and running for a school of, say, 600 students? And before Dr. Souza jumps into her answer, I'll say that our pricing varies based on number of students, and we'd be happy to address pricing with you individually. But certainly, Dr. Souza, if you want to talk to sort of generically on pricing and the rest of the software, the training, and how long it took to get up and running, that'd be great.
Sure. We do pay a price per student per year, and we thought it was a relatively small cost in relation to what we get back from it. And you know, if you think about the cost of just generating all the paper and passing them out in the production time of that, you have to factor that in as well. So we certainly thought it was worth it. So otherwise, we wouldn't have done it. In terms of the cost of training, you do need to have time devoted to this. I am a support person for the faculty, and as I said, I've developed faculty members to be support within the various departments. As far as the time frame, we piloted last spring with a couple of courses with faculty who were dying to use this. You go for the low-hanging fruit, for the people who are excited, and you start there. So we started with faculty who were very excited about it in the spring, and those became our super users over the summer when we didn't have as many courses going. We trained the faculty and devoted time to doing these seminars for them and encouraging them to build their test banks. And then this fall, we went full-blown ExamSoft. We are giving no paper tests whatsoever. Every test, every question is coded because I said, what's the use of going halfway? I need the data. How can I map density of coverage if I'm half and half? So, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not getting resistance. It's quite good because we're quite excited about the results.
Excellent. Another question, what happens to the exam that is downloaded to the student's computer once the student uploads it? Can it still be accessed later, i.e. circulated, or basically an exam integrity question?
No. The exam, once they take it, they can't ever open it again. It's gone. It's not there. What they will get back is the results. Now, the results, again, the autonomy is with the faculty member. You can just give wrong answers. You can give just the categories. You can give just the comments from essays. The level of what you give back to the student is at your discretion. Right now, we are trying to be consistent across our faculty. What we want to give them is the learning outcome addressed, the category addressed, and their performance on each learning outcome and category, and a brief description of the question. We are not releasing the question. Students cannot pick it up. Oh, and one thing I want to backtrack, because I didn't say, is when the students are in the testing environment itself, it shuts down everything else in their computer. They can't put a USB drive in the computer. It won't work. In fact, if you want to use a mouse, you have to plug it in before you open up a soft test, because once you open it up, you forget using your USB port. So you're not going to download anything. You can't take screenshots. You can't get to the internet. You cannot get anywhere except that exam. And then you close the exam, you can never get back in again. So it's really very, very high security. And we also take the questions and we, what do you call them? Oh, help me out. I'm getting tired. What's the word? Randomize. Thank you. We randomize the questions and we randomize the answers. So my 1, 2, 3, 4 is you're going to be 4, 5, 17, 19. And my ABCD is you're going to be C, D, A, E, B. So everything's randomized. Everybody gets a different test. We have 80 students. We have 80 different tests in the room. It's very, very hard to cheat. It's very secure. No, they cannot steal the information. They really can't. Short of taking their iPhone out and taking a picture with their iPhone, which they're not supposed to have phones out during the exams.
Next question's a real quick one, and I can address it for you. So did you say there was a Scantron option? And yes, there is. That's available today. We have clients who are using both laptops and Scantron at the same time. And frankly, we have larger schools who don't have a laptop policy yet, and they're using our item banking, our question analysis, and then just delivering their exams via Scantron. Next, more detailed question, can test questions be downloaded via test bank, or are they individually typed for individual buckets?
You can certainly import your questions on maps. You can import your questions, but you will have to code them. And because how is anyone going to know what learning outcome you want to tie it to? So the question is, yes, you can pull in all your questions, but then you are going to just put them in buckets. But it's a matter of checking off a box. What box do you want it to be in? So, that's not a big deal. Most of our faculty know exactly how to code. They know what they're teaching. They know what bucket it goes in. So that's not a big issue.
And we have some tools to help you automatically upload your existing items via RTF, and you can pre-categorize and put them into different buckets. Is there a function available to track the history/development of curricular map, i.e. to track changes in the curricular map for accreditation purposes?
Well, one of the things that ExamSoft does is every time you change a question, it tracks the change. So you don't lose the original question, you see every subsequent edit. So you could take a snapshot and look at how you edit your individual questions. As far as the maps, we marry this to that, I gave a hint of that actually with one of the screens that I did, is that we asked the faculty members to look at their curriculum maps and say, okay, show me this action taken. We're encouraging all of our faculty members to keep a little chart in the dossiers of the actions taken based on the data that they found. This is gold in terms of a dossier for teaching and going for promotion and tenure. If you show that you're making data-driven pedagogical decisions in your classroom, it's great, but you have to create the map to make it easy to do that, and we've done that. So we've done that outside of ExamSoft, saying take your ExamSoft data, put it in the column saying student performance, and then tell me what you're doing about it. So great, this is how they test. What does it mean? What are you doing? So what? And it's the filling out the so what that the accreditors want to see.
Next question is, does this integrate with existing LMS solutions?
And I'll let you answer that. You're going more towards an integration with Blackboard now, right?
Yeah, so we have a building block currently available on Blackboard. It includes course syncing, student add and drop syncing, and as well as grade syncing as well. So that's available today. If you have any questions about Blackboard, feel free to reach out to me directly, and we can certainly help you learn more about that.
Thank you.
Next question is there a way to import existing curriculum map database that is being used with another vendor, and they specifically mention eValue? Actually, we've worked with eValue in the past, and we don't have a specific API right now to sync directly with them, but we can certainly help you with that data. And then, Dr. Shoes, I'll pass on if you want to add any other color commentary to that.
No, because I think, remember, these tools are wonderful. You still are going to have to keep your map for your accrediting agency. Remember, you're collecting your evidence here. You're still going to have to report what you're doing with this evidence, and that's where your mapping is going to come in. I have seen too many times when people just stop with this. Okay, here's my map. What am I doing about it? I just can't stress that enough. There's got to be a bucket that you put it in where you give faculty, where you give administrators the place to record what you're doing about it. This is a wonderful tool to collect the evidence, but then you're going to have to say, what am I doing with this evidence? And that's that closing that loop that so many people forget to do.
Next question is there a way to ask questions that allow students to show their work for math-style questions?
For math? Actually, how we're handling that right now, they certainly can type in mathematical equations and expressions, but in terms of doing their work, how we handle that, we have the students fill in the blank with the answer. Our students still are given scrap paper. They still like to work things out in scrap paper. What our faculty do, they come in with their scrap paper, and it's usually color-coded, and they pass it around and say, on this yellow piece of paper, write your name, have your work, I'm going to collect it at the end, so that the faculty member has the work that the student did. They're writing in their answers in the open spaces, but some students just need to doodle. I mean, some need to scratch off, some need to do this, and this is fine. It depends on the type of learner they are. And sometimes you just want to see the process that they took in getting to where they're going. So we, on calculations and on mathematics, we do have scrap paper that we collect. Yes.
Excellent. And then also I'll add into that, we're working on some ways of capturing, showing their work as well. It's on our roadmap. It's not something we've got actually today. Another question, is there any way to do short answer narratives rather than multiple choice?
Yes. We do short answers, and it can be just like one-word answers, couple of word answers, and of course essays. But let me talk to you about the one-word or couple-word answers. What my faculty really like, let's say the answer to the question is cardiology. So you write in the correct answer is cardiology. So it's automatically going to correct, and everybody who writes cardiology, it gives them the answer correct. Then it's going to give you a list of everything everybody put that is not perfectly in match with what you wrote. So if somebody wrote cardio, it's going to show cardio. If somebody spells cardiology wrong, it's going to show you that. So you go down the list of all of the answers that the students wrote, and you just put check yes, check no, check yes, check no. Is it a good answer? Is it not a good answer? And so the one question, the one word, couple of word answers, really easy. You get the list all in a row. You just mark accept, don't accept, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, all the way down. Really cool feature. Actually, the faculty love it.
Excellent. We have a few more questions to get to, then we'll wrap up. So if you have any last questions, please feel free to type them in now. The two last questions we currently have are, if we are sharing questions using the same framework for mapping, can we upload sets of questions developed by others?
I would hope so. I would love that to happen eventually. What do you think?
Yeah, so we are working on that solution. We're looking at different ways of sharing questions. Right now we do have that capability, but it's a manual framework. So if Dr. Susan wanted to share her questions with another school and her category framework, we would upload that framework to the other school and then import those questions. So there's a way to do it. It's manual, but we're definitely more than happy to help out with that process in any way that we can.
But I will say that faculty really spent a lot of time developing these. So I have faculty who are saying, okay, I have this bank of really good questions. I'm going to give you 10 of my questions, but I want 10 of yours. So that way we can exchange, and you can validate my questions on your campus, and I can validate your questions, and who knows, maybe we can do some research together. So our faculty want to share with other faculty, and because of the nature of the work, it's personal. You know, education is personal. This is my work. I really want to keep it. So I think before you see a wholesale distribution of test banks, I think you're going to see faculty collaborations, which I strongly encourage, and we can help each other out in that respect.
Next question is, what do your students think of the feedback they've received thus far?
In fact, I met with students yesterday on it. At first, they want their whole test back, and I said, "What are you talking about? You never got them all back, so don't give me that." But they do like being able to see very specifically where the strengths and weaknesses are. And you know what? They like it, and they don't even know the full value of it yet because they've only been doing it a semester. When they get 3-4 semesters into it, then they're really going to see the value of it. But I think they do have some vision of it right now, but the full vision won't be there at least for another semester when they can see some more longitudinal data.
Excellent. And then we have one clarifying question that I'll answer. So back to the short answers versus multiple choice. You can do a hybrid exam or a mixed exam, so you can include fill in the blank, you can include multiple choice, and you can include essay questions, and those essay questions can be as short as you want them to be or as long as you want them to be. So we don't limit that, and you can have an exam that has any number of different types of questions associated with it. And if you want to group questions together, so you say you want to have a certain set of multiple choice questions, short answer questions, and essay questions, all associated within a group that are always together, you can do that as well. So I hope that clarifies the question the attendee was asking for more detail. And we'll get to one last, go ahead.
Good. No, it sounds great.
One last question. Could the faculty member bring up a student's exam in the office hours to go through it with the student, or let the student go through it while not allowing them to have the test outside of the office hours?
Absolutely, and we also have test review periods. So our faculty members project their exams actually on the board afterwards and review it with them, or sit down with them in their office. If they come and they didn't do well, they go over it with them. So certainly they do that. They're careful, protective about how they show the students because obviously they don't want it copied and distributed, but certainly they have the ability to do that and are doing that. And they do a recitation period on Friday, and they do exam reviews during recitation period. So that is being done right now.
All right, Dr. Souza, thank you very much. We've run past the hour that we had scheduled, and we've gotten to most of the questions. Again, we really appreciate your time and all the insights you've provided. I want to take a minute to plug 2 more webinars we have coming up this month. One's hosted by the UMDNJ, and it's talking about how to tactically implement computer-based testing, and how to get faculty buy-in. And then the following week, we have one hosted by the University of Rhode Island College of Pharmacy, and they're actually going to present a cost analysis of implementing computer-based testing over paper-based testing. And then their university is passionate about their environmental impact, and they've got some very interesting findings on the differences between computer-based testing and paper-based testing as well. So, Dr. Souza, I want to thank you again, and we'll send out an email early next week with the recorded version of this and Dr. Souza's slides. Dr. Souza, thank you very much.
Oh, you're most welcome. I enjoyed the process. Thank you.
Everyone have a great day.